thing is getting a conversation going and sharing stories. So my encouragement to you is, as you have a thought, please share it. And the other thing I should say is share it in whichever language you feel comfortable in. Polish, we may need to call on the Russians to help out with. Farsi, you're on your own, but your other languages we might be fine.
I can be also Farsi.
There we are. There we are. So we can.
It's in majority.
It would be wonderful to hear the different languages, but on the serious side, don't sit there trying to work out how to ask a question. Just ask it in whatever language fits, and we'll make a plan, as they say in South Africa. So what I thought I would do is focus firstly on what is coaching, and then what is integral coaching, which nearly everybody raised, and then the how does it work, and that's some of the theory, the philosophies behind it, but also sharing some stories. And then, depending on where your interest lies and how the timing works, maybe talk a bit about rolling it out across Barclays Africa, when we did. And then we've got time afterwards if anyone has questions they want to ask. But we must remember to make some time for you to talk about this course and how it's going to be working. So hopefully we will address all the things that you raised. But if we don't, please share it so we can bring it in. Okay.
Just a question. Would you like the window closed for the noise?
No, I don't think so, because it's quite warm.
Yes, we think so. Just let it move.
Just trying to work it out because I'm not sure.
Does it work out?
Yeah, this is fine. So one of the key skills that I learned as part of the process that Daniel was talking about working with the Centre for Coaching was drawing. So you will have my artistic diagrams. But the best way of describing what coaching is, I find, is to draw a picture, because you get lots of long sentences of what it is and what it isn't, and I don't know about you, I tend to switch off partway through. So the way I describe coaching is if you have two people and one person has a challenge, let us call it. So it could be a problem, it could be I'm having real relationship problems at work, my team just aren't coming with me, or it could be an opportunity. I've got a choice of jobs to go to, I'm not sure which way to go. And you can take it exactly the same outside of work, a relationship problem or options, where am I going to live, what kind of life do I want. So it can be a problem, but it can also be an opportunity. And if someone comes to us with a challenge, a question, our natural instinct as human beings, I believe, is to jump straight to the challenge, the problem. I know exactly what you need to do. And we tend to go, we dip back into our experience, our qualifications, wisdom, what we've seen, and we will dip into that so that we can then give advice. You were talking about that. And there's nothing wrong with it. I really don't want you to go away thinking there is anything wrong with that at all, because this person has some solutions, something they can put into practice. And let's be honest, it makes us feel good as well. I helped that person. The only thing with it is, it isn't coaching. And it's the clearest differentiator I've come across between coaching and anything else. As a coach, you do not give advice. And we can talk about football coaches, which is an example of where they take the word and just plonk it onto something. But in its purest form, a coach would not give advice. This bit of dipping into experience and sharing it to help the individual is mentoring, really. It's the key differentiator. So it is a very, very powerful way of working with people. But coaching offers other things. So what a coach does is they will focus on the individual rather than the problem. So a coach won't look just at the problem. obviously you need to understand where this person is wanting assistance. But as a coach, what we do is we focus on understanding the person, and in particular, what is it that they are doing that is causing them to get stuck. And the way we do that, we will talk about, but two of the most powerful ways, very simple but very powerful, is asking effective questions and listening. We spend so much of our lives not being listened to. And often a coach, just by making you feel that you can open up and talk to them, and those of us who've been coached will have known what this actually feels like, you hear yourself saying things and you start to see patterns. And a coach is also someone that will hold up the mirror and say, you know, I've noticed when you do this, this is what's happening. And before I go on, maybe let me stop there and just ask, how does that match with how you had seen coaching before? You're ready, you heard it last night.
Last night.
Yeah. But it amazes me. I worked for Barclays for a long time, and we put the word coaching into everybody's contracts, everybody's performance plans, because it's kind of the buzzword now, and I just sit there thinking, this is not coaching. You really don't understand what coaching is. So when we talk about coaching tonight, that is the key differentiator. We focus on the person and not the problem, and you won't give advice. Okay. The best way really to illustrate that is with an example of someone I was working with in Mozambique. And his challenge, he was doing a very good job. He was a member of the executive committee, working very well. But he came to me because he was working really, really late every evening, and he was working weekends. And he had a young family, and it was getting in the way. He was very unpopular. Now, he could have gone to a mentor. And actually, his boss, the CEO, was very good at work-life balance. And he could have said, what are your tips, your hints for managing your workload and looking after a young family? He'd already done training courses, you know, the time management ones. He knew about urgent and important and all of those things. But still he was getting stuck. So he came to me as his coach. And we had a conversation. So one of the key things as coaches is to understand, so what is it they've been trying already? And he talked about how he prioritised his workload, and he did a to-do list. But he said, the thing is, I don't get to my to-do list until midway through the afternoon, because people keep coming in with questions. So what we agreed to do was for him to notice who was coming in, what were they bringing to him, how long was it distracting him for, all these sort of fairly common sense things. And it was amazing, because he came back to me a few weeks later and said, the things that people are bringing to me, and it's my team members that are bringing it to me, are more important than anything I have on my to-do list. So I could, if I weren't coaching, have quite easily said to him, just shut the door and stop them coming in. And he would have lost that insight that what they were bringing to him was more important than what he had on his to-do list. And he also was an ideal client. He brought the solution, his own solution. He said, so I've told my team between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning, that's their time. I won't book any meetings. They can come in and share. And that really illustrates one of the underpinning beliefs of coaching, which is that this person may have a challenge, but they are not broken, or at least no broken than all of us are. They have the answers within them. It's just we have so much stuff going on, and we're so busy doing, that a coach's role can often be to help you step back and see, what are the habits I've got that are getting in my way? Okay. You're all nodding. Is this making sense so far? I'm conscious we've got some very experienced coaches in the room, so if anything I say does just jars, let me know. But the beauty of coaching is it is so simple. It's not easy, but it is simple to understand. Okay, so let's come on to what makes it integral. And I'll be really interested to see how integral and holistic fits. I suspect it's the same.
I do too.
Yeah, well, it should be, linguistically, grammatically, it should be, shouldn't it? The integral, I mean, integral means bringing all things in together. And there are, to my mind, there are three key ways in which it is integral. One is very pragmatic. As an integral coach, if I see something, a philosophy, a training, an insight, a tool, and I think it will help me as a coach, then I will take it and integrate it. So we're taking quite a grand name for what I think most of us would do naturally. The second part of what makes it integral to me as well is that it is founded on the belief that a person is a person, whatever context they're in. So all of us sat here are not different people with our friends, with our family, at work. We may show different sides of ourselves, but the inner core, the soul, if you like, it's the same person. So if I'm working with someone in an executive coaching context, for example, and they are bringing an issue that is showing up at work, the chances are that is showing up somewhere else. And as an aside, I actually worked with someone who, his issue was anger. You will learn as the evening goes on, I attract angry men. Primarily, I'm one angry woman, but that's fine. But this particular angry man, his issue, he was told by his boss, is you lose your temper with people at work. And we had a conversation, and he said, actually, I don't think I do anymore. It used to be. He's not close enough to me to see that it's changed, but I've had feedback that it has. So I said, well, okay, that's fine. So where else does this anger show up? And he said, with my children. He had 2 young boys. He said, I lose my temper with my children. And I said, well, we can focus there. And he said, but this is Barclays coaching. How can we focus on that? It's nothing to do with work. And I said, how would you be at work if your relationship with your children were improved? And he said, I'd be completely different. I'd be very relaxed, very present. He didn't use those words because he was an accountant actuary. But that's what he meant. So that's where we focus. So that's the second part of integral. And you're nodding, so I'm thinking it's the same. Great. The third part is quite interesting. So another one of my stick people. In a lot of what we do, certainly in a corporate environment, we will focus here on the cognitive, the intellectual. And there are huge, huge things going on in people's brains that I'm convinced we still don't know half of how the brain works. So, NLP, all sorts of things. So I'm not meaning to say that this is not important. This is critical. But in a corporate environment, this tends to be where it stops. And whenever we have a problem or a challenge, we go straight to our thinking, logical mind to fix it. And the challenge with that is it doesn't always work. And if it does work, it's not always long term. So what makes the coaching integral is we don't just focus on the cognitive. We bring in the emotions. And when I started work in a corporate, the emotions were something you would check at the door. So they pick those up when you go home. And the comment, she's so emotional. And he was always a she. If it's a man, he's too emotional, they meant he got too angry. And it's interesting, we will use this phrase, too emotional, when we don't like the emotion that's being shown. So I've not had any colleague that was told he was too happy or too smiley. It's always been the darker side. And I'm seeing more and more of the emotions at work because of emotional intelligence. And I'm laughing, it's just so funny that people will say, well, he needs to work on his EQ, that's his problem. And they've got no idea really what it means. It means that I don't want to see if he's unhappy with me. So what integral coaching does is it focuses just as much on what's happening emotionally as what's happening cognitively, intellectually. And that can be quite a challenge in a corporate environment, and I'll share some examples. But the other one is the somatic, is the physical, the body, the gut. And if emotions are checked at the door, bodies just don't exist in the corporate world. Your body is what carries your brain from meeting to meeting, and that's all it's there for. And there are a number of reasons that this is important. Let me maybe give you an example. I was working with a risk person. This was my banking is financial. My background is banking and financial, so it tends to be sort of the hard-nosed, logical people I've worked with. And he had been given, he was my second angry man, he'd been given feedback, you show your emotions too easily in meetings. And he had identified, yes, he did get angry in meetings, but he didn't see what he was to do about that, because if he was angry, he was angry. So we worked together with the self-observation, which Diane mentioned before, because remember, this is not about me having the answers as coach, this is about them seeing what it is they're doing that is causing the challenge. And I asked him to notice the cognitive. Who are you with? What are you doing? What are you thinking when you notice this happen? What else are you feeling other than anger? Because we very rarely feel just one emotion, but we often stop at that. And what is happening to you physically? And he came back and he said, I've identified a theme, some themes. I've identified that it's when someone who is senior to me cuts across me or interrupts me in meetings. And I feel, yes, I feel angry, but I feel threatened, I feel insecure. He did very well on that for someone trained in risk his whole career. He did his emotions very well. But he said, I don't feel anything physically. Nothing happens to my body. And I knew him well enough to say, well, you're either dead or you're just not tuning into your body. So let us talk about one of the instances. So he talked about an instance in a team meeting. He was presenting the budget numbers, and he said, and my boss just interrupted me and told me no one was interested. And I said, look what is happening. You're leaning forward and your fists are clenched. And he was punching the air. And it was almost as though it was another person, because he sort of leapt back. And so we said, okay, so when you are angry, you lean forward and you clench your fist. And it sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But he was completely unaware that he was doing that. And the reason that is important is twofold. One is, it's no wonder people in the meetings were finding him quite difficult to deal with. He was leaning forward and making punching gestures towards them. But also, it used to be thought that we had a thought, it turned into an emotion, and we felt something physically. The research is showing it's actually the other way around as well. So it's kind of a loop going on. So if he was able to notice his hands clenching and him leaning forward, that was his trigger. Something is triggering me now, and I have a choice. Because effectively that's what we're doing. We're enabling people to move from just reacting without thinking about it to making a conscious choice. So with him, what we worked on, he developed, was that he would sit back and he would just put his hands flat on his legs when he noticed, do a few deep breaths, and then decide, is this something important that I'm going to challenge? Because there's nothing wrong with anger. Anger is telling you something. It's how you actually express it. And talking about the link between the three, I read something just today. They did some research. I can't remember where it was. Probably in the States, isn't it? That's where all the research comes from. But people were watching cartoons, and they had to rate the cartoons on how funny they were. And they had two groups. And one group had to hold a pencil between their lips, so they were pursed. And the other group had to hold the pencil between their teeth. They were like that. And without fail, the ones with it between their teeth, with their mouth in a smile, rated the cartoons as funnier than the ones with it pursed. Amazing, isn't it? And if you think about it, if you're feeling down and your whole posture goes down, it has a vicious circle, I guess that would be. It starts to impact your emotions, whereas an optimistic posture can have an impact. And what makes it integral is we take that in as well. So there is no point someone having an intellectual breakthrough unless something actually shifts somatically, either physically, or they do something different. So in my client's case, it was sitting back and putting his hands down. In the first client's case, the do something different was very pragmatic. I'm going to set aside 2 hours and I'm going to sit there and wait for my team to come in.
Just felt like I want to share something.
Please
Very
do.
quick. There is very interesting TED talk about this